right, so we are going to continue the conversation that Dr. Kelly so graciously set us up for. My name is Christina Francis. I spent the last 2.5 decades at the intersection of technology, access to capital, and future of work. I spent the last 5 years actually leading a team focused on innovation and future of work from a systems perspective. I've since launched a company called Ken and Commons, where we are working with families, communities, and regional ecosystems to really think about livelihood systems. Can you say livelihood systems? Yes, not wages, not salaries, not jobs, but lively wage systems. Partly based on what Dr. Kelly has said. Our workforce is broken, we still have it, but people are trying to find different ways of fulfilling their talent, their purpose, their work, in ways that allow them to get paid differently. So I have an amazing panel that's representing founders. So we've got Andres in the middle, who is the CEO of Coley, and he'll share a little bit more shortly. We've got Ann Havard, who works with Worker Solutions, and so she is working with PE, private equity-backed companies, and supporting them on their journey to supporting their workers. And we've got Jessica Lindell, who has a couple of lenses that you're coming from, a systems lens, a social impact lens, working with Unity, and then also just a capital lens as well. She's also the author of the Career Game Loop book, which you can share a little bit about. So before we get started, I'd love for you all just to give a word that describes this moment in workforce, learning, and education, and I'm intentionally using those three. Okay.
I'll start.
Hello.
Is this one working?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. One word, curiosity.
Uncertainty.
Agency.
Love them all, love them all. And I say sovereignty, similar to agency, sovereignty. So one of the things we hope to do as we start talking on this panel is think about how we optimize for people and families, not just systems, to think about how capital is not only efficient but catalytic in this moment of creativity and opportunity, and most importantly, thinking about how we design systems for flourishing and thinking about who is at the table for those designs. So, Andres, I'm going to start with you as the founder. First, share a little bit about Coley and what you're doing globally.
So in Coley, we are using AI to bet on the job creation. So in this world in where like most of the technology is being used to automate operations, we are using the same technology to be able to identify new opportunities and finding new jobs for people, especially from like the global south, but extended to the US as well.
And so you're working across countries. Talk about some of the trends that you're actually seeing right now in the workplace.
Excellent. So we have seen two main trends. First, the teams are starting to be smaller and smaller, or hiring freeze, more senior hires, or a bunch of like interns, and seniors as well. So there is like a missing middle that is being like a frozen in there.
So what questions do you think funders, investors, even founders should start thinking about or asking differently as we're supporting this new workforce?
So this is a very interesting moment on the time, and this is why I said uncertainty in this moment, but it's not just in a negative sense, it's also a positive one. Because think about it, in history, in the ancient history, we were working with our body, like it was physical work. Then we invent machines and we transform into knowledge work. Currently, the AI is automating knowledge, which means that there is an uncertainty in what will replace like the value per person. So that in this moment, founders are asking, okay, what's the value per employee? Is that the academic titles? Are those the skills? Is that the capacity of connections? And at the same time, investors, they are asking us all the time, how much is the revenue per employee? How much each employee is bringing revenue to the table?
So we were talking earlier, and you mentioned a couple of things, and I want you to answer these two questions or share with the audience your journey. So one, as a startup, oftentimes you're raising funding, and you're in an interesting moment right now where you've raised some money, but you're actually focused on revenue. Can you talk a little bit about that, how this moment has been different for you?
So we raised our pre-seed round some years ago, and in this moment, in our conversations with investors, we gotta be like generating a much more revenue than the ones that we used to be generating at this point of the company. So we as startup founders have been pushed towards like profitability. Fortunately, we are already profitable, so we are maintaining our company with a cash flow. But this is different than what used to be happening in 2021. Like in 2021, like on our stage, like companies were getting more and more money despite the fact of being profitable. So that has been changing. Right now, we have to be focused on revenue, we have to be focused on profits, we have to be focused on sustainability. And this is like the current position right now.
Excellent. We'll come back to that also. So Anne, we'll go to you. And I met Anne a couple of years ago when I was actually at Jobs for the Future, and we had the opportunity to talk about a lot of startups and where they were going. You get a front eye view of some of these companies and really the struggles and opportunities they have with the workforce. Can you share a little bit about Worker Solutions and what you're seeing?
Yeah, and Christina, thank you so much for inviting us to join you for this important conversation. Worker Solutions works with small and medium-sized businesses all over the country on how to improve jobs and benefits for frontline workers. We were founded with a theory of change that capital alone is insufficient to grow some of the forgotten about growing and thriving businesses that are all over the country in the places where private capital is not flowing. So if you look at where most private capital is flowing, it's flowing to 5 states on the coast that we could all name. There are a lot of other growing and thriving businesses that are in places like Opelika, Alabama, and Slidell, Louisiana, with frontline workers. But those businesses are growing quickly and they need support beyond capital. And so Worker Solutions basically plays a matchmaking role for businesses to understand the workforce challenges they see on the front lines and then access improved benefits providers that do things like emergency savings or financial coaching or student loan repayment benefits. But it's benefits that, that businesses often don't know exist and don't have the capacity to vet. And so we play as that matchmaking service and are building a self-service digital tool for businesses to use for that.
They're doing such amazing work. It's interesting. I've had conversations with people who say, if my health insurance was not attached to my job, I would leave my job. Some of the things that you're looking at are those benefits systems, those incentives. Can you share a little bit about what you're seeing around well-being and health and other types of benefits that workers are asking for?
Yeah. So typically, and by the way, my background is actually in the financial health space, and I like to say that this fact is like the best or the worst best kept secret in the financial health of American workers' lives is that low and moderate income Americans are 3 to 4 times less likely to be using healthcare and retirement benefits compared to higher income earners. So even if those benefits are offered, if you're a frontline worker or you're living paycheck to paycheck, you can't access those benefits because of liquidity challenges. And so we're seeing things like zero interest loans or emergency savings or financial coaching, student loan repayment benefits actually start to fill some of that liquidity gap so workers can build wealth. But the other thing we see is an awareness gap. 60% of workers think that they are saving for retirement when they're not. So people are assuming that they're auto-enrolled. Additionally, small and medium-sized businesses do not know all the ins and outs of 401k plan design or some of those additional benefits. And so that's really what we're here to help shepherd.
So one of the things we wanted to talk about was the capital stack, and private equity plays a big role in that capital stack. What role do you think private equity should continue to play? Of course, there's a lot of arguments on private equity should get more involved, less involved, but again, you have a front row seat. Talk a little bit about that
So I think private equity is involved whether we like it or not. And I do think there is this question often of, do we have to make this decision of trade-offs of should we invest in human flourishing and good for workers, or should we just invest in returns? And we really do view those as one and the same, particularly for labor-intensive businesses. Investing in human flourishing, investing in a stronger workforce builds a stronger risk-adjusted return for investors, and that's what we've been able to see play out. If you have a high turnover workforce, that is an operational risk and a financial risk for your investors. So I do think there is a growing movement within the private capital space around good jobs. But I was telling Christina earlier, I can count on like one, maybe two hands, all of those firms. So I think our next kind of phase in this movement of how can private capital advance stronger workforce outcomes and human flourishing is really looking at what are the opportunities to align with value creation-oriented private equity firms that are smaller to mid-size. They're already caring about this work. They're already hiring chief people officers to work across their portfolios. How do you make sure that they are aware of quality jobs, future of work, the importance of solving for benefits gaps?
Love that. Jessica, we're going to come to you now. So Anne talked a little bit about the systemic barriers facing workers and the role of private equity. You've had an interesting trajectory in this space as well. Can you share that and also share what you're seeing in the white space?
So I was wondering how Christina was going to tie all this together. Just a little bit about my background. We've heard a lot about technology and systems and companies. I'm obsessively focused on the human, the person in the loop. And about halfway through my career, I just had this aha moment that young people who grew up playing video games had an incredible ability to reinvent themselves and continuously adapt to the chaos of today's job market and today's economy. So a lot of what I'm hoping to contribute to this conversation is the agency for individuals to be able to navigate through these moments. As Christina mentioned, I launched a book called The Career Game Loop, which is all about this mindset of agency, resiliency, adaptability in these moments when systems and companies and communities are grappling with how to create long-term sustainable jobs.
So with that, and you did a lot of work with Unity, working with communities and colleges and universities. I'm curious, actually I'm going to ask you, and I'm curious of each person on the panel, if you think college and universities are keeping up with demand, and if there's anything that they should be doing to pivot.
No, and that's not new. But I think that there's some really incredible partnership models out there that institutions are taking, whether it's colleges, universities, or workforce programs, to be able to keep up with this demand. Just building on the last conversation that we listened to, it is definitely a focus on skills, but I just want to go one step further, that it's a focus on durable skills, otherwise known as soft skills. So what are the human skills that we do better than any artificial intelligence that we can contribute to the work going forward, and really doubling down on those durable skills, because as we change jobs on average right now every 4 years, most of the jobs that we're moving into haven't even been invented yet. Those durable and soft skills that we're building continue to build throughout every single job we have. They don't change in those specific skills, so it's really the asset that we need to keep investing in, not just starting at colleges and universities, but very early on in our education experience.
I want to add 2 cents on that. I totally agree with Jessica. College are not being able to sustain like the demand or the change of the abilities, and that is happening because there is a structural difference. You as a college need to do the research, create a new program, do all the approvals, and then come out with a degree, like years after the actual companies are demanding the actual skills. Which means that like you are going to be like behind the demands of the market. This is why the colleges are our main client. So they do partnerships with Quali, as Quali is like an AI career coach that determines the role of the person, a job finder that look for the jobs, and an educator that suggests programs to be able to, or companies like Quali, other solutions that make possible new paths. But the colleges are starting to reinvent themselves. They are like relying more and more on alumni repurchase capital, and in this sense, like partnership with technology is key and is needed to be double clicked on or dig deeper for colleges as well.
I'll concur with everybody that we have some work to do. Higher education loves to point fingers at employers. Employers love to point fingers at higher education. And in the middle of doing that, we forget about workers. So I do think there is an opportunity for us to think about what is the skills journey. How do you embed skills development through not just training and higher ed, but through someone's career? And actually, I would even say view skills development as an employee benefit, not as some separate thing. This needs to be a part of the package that we're presenting to a worker when we say this is a job and a career path for you.
Thank you for indulging me on that one. And I'm going to take a moderator point. My 16-year-old son, Evan, is sitting in the audience. Evan, will you raise your hand, son? He's so excited to be here. One of the things, and on Dr. Kelly, she mentioned that skills outweigh degrees. Our son actually using Almost Captain Morgan, who is an influencer on TikTok, and YouTube, and Microsoft Simulator, fell in love with aviation, and then came to my husband and I and asked us to allow him to take pilot lessons. He's 16, and he's going to get his private pilot lessons soon. And we're having conversations on what's next for college, what's next for work. And I only share that because so often we talk about the stakeholders being private equity and founders. Families also have to start understanding all of the opportunities for their children and really creating those new pathways for livelihood possibilities and opportunities. So I just want to share that. How many people think that Evan should go to college next year? Raise your hand. Okay. Not sure? How many people think that he should take an apprenticeship in the field that he's interested in and move forward that way? How many people think he should start his own aviation company? So Evan, you have some choices. And this leads me back to your book. You have a framework that really talks about learning, reskilling, advancing, and kind of going through that loop. But our systems aren't really ready for that. So can you share a little bit about why you came up with that and how we should adjust to it?
Sure. So the career game loop concept is based on that 4-year cycle that I described of a new job every 4 years. If you can imagine an open world video game, Legends of Zelda, your first step in the loop is just going on your quest, which is what it feels like when you launch into that game. You have no rule book, you have no idea where to start, and that's what almost every recent grad feels like, whether it's a grad of high school or a grad of higher ed. As you figure out what you want to do in relationship with coaches or mentors, you're then leveling up on step 2, which is just like leveling up in a video game, getting to step 3, that ultimate holy grail of getting the job offer and the job opportunity. And then step 4 is sort of like in Minecraft, where you're just job crafting into your next role. And the thesis of the book is moving all the anxiety that young people feel about their future into a place of agency and empowerment. And you can actually use the systems and the schools and the relationships and your families to be able to navigate this from a sense of your own purpose and your own direction, as opposed to being overwhelmed by your anxiety and having your AI applications talk to other AI agents and end up in this like dead end zone of no job opportunities after hundreds of applications. That's the thesis.
So let's dig a little bit deeper into that. If this playbook is indeed the new economic playbook, who else needs to be at the table? What does that partnership or coalition look like?
So I think the key here is that, again, it's really deeply human relationships. What is unlocking your economic opportunity and jobs right now are your relationships. It's your social networks. It's your communities that are doing that. So truly learning how to build these relationships. Again, these are young people who grew up in the age of social media, then COVID, and now AI. So human relationships are not a strength, first and foremost. So learning to build those relationships, identifying your coaches, your mentors, through your families, your friends, your systems, and then having them help guide you. and open up opportunities for you along the way.
So question for each of you, when we think about the catalytic capital that's needed for testing, experimenting, and bringing new capabilities to the table, what are some things that this audience should be thinking about from that perspective?
Constantly ask who is not in the room. I see so often, actually I was telling Christina earlier, I've been on a little bit of a conference tour over the last few weeks. And the conversations we're having here versus the conversations at a workforce development conference versus the conversations at a financial health conference, all of us trying to solve the same types of problems are so different. And I think there's a lot of bridge building that we've got to do to get AI literacy, to get use cases, to get specificity really equalized across all of these different sectors that are trying to serve the same population. So constantly ask who's not in the room.
I would say put your capital in two elements. First, using the technology to exponentially improve your results, and secondly, use the remaining point on developing your network, developing these in-person interactions that, in consequence, are going to be one of the most important parts of the human value that will be proposing value into any. Either it's a company, either it's a job, or either it's a private equity fund, so on and so forth. Tech and relations.
Are any of you in the audience from San Francisco? All right, so about half of us are from San Francisco. You can agree, if you've been here like I have for a couple decades, you watch these waves come in of the internet and then mobile and then cloud, and now we're in the wave of AI. But this wave is really different. There's not a lot of people coming with it. You're not having this like sky high rent happening. There are AI entrepreneurs with teams that are located all around the world. And so as a result of that, you're seeing the city, who is still having a challenge of bringing workers back to downtown and increasing capital for taxes, continue to struggle with, despite this incredible boom happening with OpenAI and Anthropic, just over south of Market. And so I spent last night at a place that I usually don't go to, which is the construction union's annual meeting. And I've spent time with the construction union over the last year, not because of my day job at Unity, which is about finding people to move into jobs building video games, but because the construction union, in my opinion, has the most accessible, sustainable career path right now happening in San Francisco. And so I think my hope is that we just all start creating relationships in unexpected places to be able to unlock this opportunity that is really ambiguous and unclear in this moment.
I love that. Thank you so much. So one of the reasons why, again, we wanted to have different representation across private equity or working with private equity-backed companies, those that are starting startups and raising money by raising revenue and working with people, and then kind of the trajectory of bringing things together, was just to show that we are evolving as a new job, new funding landscape and opportunity. The last question that I'll ask you guys is, what are the blind spots that you see right now as we think about the traditional workforce and education and then the new wave that we are all trying to create here?
I'll start. So workforce development systems and training providers, social services agencies have absolutely no idea what agent-to-agent protocol is. And when I learned about it a few weeks ago, I was personally like, this is a game changer. This is about to actually dismantle some of the systemic barriers that we have talked about the silos in workforce and higher ed and employers, social services. Like, this is an absolute game changer, and if we don't even have the language to talk about it, we're already behind. And so that's my new evangelist attitude, is just learn, play around, because otherwise you're going to have blind spots. And I feel like I'm seeing that across several systems right now that are already behind. which is discouraging. But there has to be a way to also like tackle the fear that people have and say, listen, if you just play around for a second and start to think through some of these use cases and think about how if you are referring someone to a social services navigator, they're going to be able to refer. That agent can refer to another agent on financial coaching in a really efficient way that we couldn't do otherwise, and that's exciting to me. That's what we've wanted all along, was better outcomes for underserved populations. Why aren't we all just jumping in and diving in and working to solve those blind spots? But
Good. So I would say that neither like the platforms of jobs, neither the education, neither the government, like are seeing that the economy of knowledge is coming to an end, in my personal perspective, which means that the value perceived by the employer by how many titles it has, how many masters they have, how many PhDs they have, is going to change. Right now, as in the past, the one that was bigger and has more muscle was not more relevant because we had machines that can do that job. Now we have machines that can do the knowledgeable job better than us, which means that the weakest or the blindest spot that we are seeing is that we are not being preparing ourselves from other things rather than the knowledge. There are just going to be a few people that are going to be the programmers of these new AIs. But there are other things that the human can do, like relationship management, make the things happen, proactivity, and so much other things that we are learning in this conference. And this is because like this conference is that important. So I would say that that's the blind spot.
I think the biggest blind spot we have right now is the reality of labor market data. It is just totally outdated, slow moving, and so it's really unclear to see right now that the quote-unquote layoffs that may or may not be happening are not only happening, but companies are no longer recruiting and backfilling because we're just beginning agentic. I think you guys have all seen the data on people with 4-year degrees and being the most unemployed cohort right now and going down 10% year over year. So we're just beginning the presence of agentic AI in the workplace and the impact of that, and there's nobody able to forecast 12 months, 24 months, what does that mean for specific jobs, and how do we pivot the learning and credentialing that's happening right now in these key skills?
Awesome, and I'll answer that too. I think one of the biggest blind spots we have is not teaching entrepreneurship at an early age and making sure that people understand the opportunity of ownership. I think we're going to start seeing people going in and out of jobs into ownership, and we want to make sure that we have those going forward. If you were here earlier in the day, you saw Nicole put up a slide that showed the new jobs of the future, kind of in this white area over here. We're still so focused in the labor market that we have today. We need more people focused in the labor market of tomorrow, which means we need more companies that are starting. It is okay to fail, learn, pivot, right? But we need to make sure we're testing, we're advocating for, we're advancing new models and new companies. And so that's one thing we'll ask this group of creators and people who are in the forefront, is to make sure that we're creating that for not only our young adults, but also the adults in this room. I want a round of applause for our panel. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you all for being here. We appreciate it.